Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by ECIS. ECIS is the Educational Collaborative of International Schools, established for 55 years as a not-for-profit organisation. We have over 500 members in 78 countries. My name is Georgie McIntyre and I am the Chief Learning Officer at ECIS, leading on professional development support for the international schools community. It is my pleasure to introduce today's webinar. There has been an unprecedented time for schools around the world. The international schools market has seen an enormous wave of impact since January, when the first schools in China were closed. Since then, international school heads of business and finance have had to address huge unpredictability whilst managing significant financial challenges from all directions of their school's community, and are now planning and juggling for reopening and the next academic year. Please join me in welcoming the SIG Business and Finance Committee. They are made up of Ruth Smiley, Head of Business and Finance at the International School of Luxembourg since 2000. Piotr is currently working as the Business and Facility Manager at the International School of Krakow. Tatiana is working as the Business and Operations Manager at the American International School of Zagreb. Special interest groups are an active body of volunteer practitioners contributing both to the professional development of other practitioners and to the international school sector as a whole. Much of the wonderful content you will experience has been created, and this is their vision. All of it will be here today. Topics that will be included are: has deconfinement started, and if so, how? Things that also you will discuss are: what extra expenses have surprised you, and what precautionary measures to financial aid have you implemented? What enrolment scenarios are you planning? Any worldwide enrolment trends? What is the most challenging right now in the budget? And are there any advice from those that have reopened their school? So I'm now going to hand over to the panelists, and this is very much your questions and answers. So please feel free to pop your questions in the Q&A box or the discussion chat box, which we'll be sharing as we go through. This webinar is recorded, and we will be emailing and sharing out a copy of the recording after today. I now hand you over to the panel.
Yes, so hello, I'm Ruth Smiley from the International School of Luxembourg. We are, as Georgie said, a resource that you can contact and approach for questions that may be more specific. But today, we're just going to present the situation of each of our schools. In Luxembourg, we're pre to 12 school of about 1,300. We were nearing 1,400 students, and we did re-entry on an alternate week basis for all the secondary students from the 11th of May, and all of the secondary students from the 11th of May, all of the primary students since the 25th of May. Again, on alternate weeks, which means that half the classes every other week come into school. We have temperature cameras at the entrance, and the cafeteria is not open. There has to be a pre-ordering system, and primary students eat in their classroom, and secondary students eat in the cafeteria as if it was an examination room with distancing of individual tables. Yes, we've had an experience that I would qualify, and probably nobody would qualify otherwise, as not enjoyable. But clearly the children were and staff were happy to come back. It's just that it does have a toll on the sort of, we've had it since mid-May, we had virtual since mid-March. It just has a sort of, well, we're nearly holiday, yeah? We're on holiday next week, so that's probably where the tiredness comes from. But it is true that it's been a challenging and interesting time because clearly we are not a virtual school. However much we invested in technology, I would say the virtual aspect has a completely different need, and has challenges. In terms of expenses, luckily in Luxembourg, there was a pretty big support for technical unemployment or for family leave because of COVID and such. So on that front, we didn't use technical unemployment, mainly because one, we benefit from a state subsidy. So we did not, we weren't allowed for that, but at least parents or other parts of the economy did. And otherwise, the family leave, you know, allowing parents to be at home and be their salary be paid, of course, had certain benefits, and will probably have long-term benefits as well for the school. But in terms of costs, yeah, well, thermal cameras clearly weren't on our budget. Cancelling trips wasn't on our budget, but luckily we were able to roll over a number of those deposits. We had a number of barriers, a number of, you know, stickers for arrows around the buildings. We had a number of substitutes that, because we had re-entry, we had staff that are home, but substitutes needing to be in class when the students were coming. We had how to order the lunches, and, you know, those were clearly more expensive than planned because we were asking for a different service, and our providers asked for some kind of volume premium because we didn't have the volumes to provide for the income or compensate for the loss. And I'd say, yeah, for me, there wasn't any sort of massively surprising costs, but we're still concluding on them. Yeah. So the challenging part, if I go through the questions, clearly enrollment. And then the next one, staff, bringing them in, can they come in? And that is also linked with enrollment. It's, are they going to be able to come back? And are the new families that we have on our books going to be able to turn up? So I think that rounds it up for me in Luxembourg. So I'll pass it over to my counterparties, Tatiana, yeah, in Zagreb.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. I'm business manager and operations manager in Zagreb, American International School, and our government and local schools started in May, 4th of May. However, we as international school were not obligated to do so, so we continued with virtual learning, which was a good decision, because it was really lots of things that we need to adjust. As Ruth explained, social distance of 1.5 meters in the classrooms, which means that in our classrooms can be only 8 to 10 people, the students, which, you know, it's less than half, so we would have big issues. Then also using cafeteria and playground and recess and all this. So what we did is that we continue with virtual learning, and now during May and June we have the established crisis management team, which where we actually prepared all the rules if those measures stays, how and what we will do in August. Our biggest concern is that Croatia actually is releasing those measures, and it's less and less strict. However, we are open for tourists, and this can escalate with cases, and it can be worse, but it can also stay as is in August. The biggest problem is that local schools starts in September. So whatever measures are now in place, it will continue to be in August when we start. So we will need to start based on those measures, which can, in September, we will either go virtual again, or we will be able a little bit to have less strict classrooms. So measures, and our concern is also if new teachers will be able to come, also families. We depend on embassies, which are, changing every 3 years approximately. So some families left. We are expecting new in August. So far, luckily, enrollments shows that we will be on the level that it's budgeted. It enables us to cover the costs and have some extra money. However, we will see. It all depends, as I said, what will happen during the summer. So that's and I don't know how it will be next year. We definitely spend some additional money to buy equipment and to buy all these masks and gloves and sanitizers and all this. And also there is a issue this year with some pre-K families which are still requiring money back. So if we are going virtual again beginning of next year, or even September or October, we have to decide what we will do with those families, because actually we are not babysitting. We organize quite well with virtual learning for grade 1 to 12, but it's always issue with those little ones.
Thank you, Tatiana. Piotr, would you like to share how things are in your Krakow at the moment?
Welcome everyone again on the second webinar. I'm Piotr. I'm a business manager from the International School of Krakow, Poland. And ISK has reopened on May 25th, as it was aligned with the decision on public schools. So we, as a school quasi-diplomatic entity, we didn't have to follow the guidelines by the Polish authorities. However, our school board decided to reopen the school, and we were back on May 25th with all of these sanitary restrictions. And the government decided to reopen the school up to grade 3, only for caring purposes. However, we decided to conduct a full curriculum, taking into account the sanitary regime, and that was the most scary thing built in the plan. And the anti-epidemic guidelines have imposed many sanitary restrictions, and like the group was up to 12 children, the minimum space that could not be less than 4 square meters per child. Equipment removal, if cannot be effectively disinfected or washed, and equipment on the playground should be regularly cleaned and disinfected, and of course social distancing, 1.5 meters between teachers and students. So basically it was ongoing disinfection all the time, door handles, handrails, switches, and so on and so on. including the all equipped sport equipment on the playground. So it was quite challenging. And we asked the parents before May 25th, before we reopened the school, if they would like to come back or stay virtual. So we were running hybrid model. So the families who decided to come back, they couldn't, change their decision to be on virtual or vice versa. So we didn't have a high percentage of the early years and lower elementary school to commit to come back. However, regardless of how many students came back, we had to implement all of these sanitary restrictions and guidelines, which was quite challenging in terms of the time frame and in terms of the plan that we had to build basically within few days. But yesterday it was final day, the last day of school, and I think it was very successful, especially last 4 weeks when we were running school on site and also virtual, and parents could absolutely, those two groups could get the education in the best possible way. So it was a lot of technology, also challenges, as Ruth has mentioned, and also it was I think a good decision, because many parents were struggling with time and how they can continue still teaching their kids in home and also working at the same time. So the school was quite open and took this decision to allow students to come back to school. So we have right now this experience. I think everyone is exhausted, staff, teachers, admin, and but I think it's a good experience and overlook how the things will look if we come back in September. And also from inside, so from staff perspective, but also from parents perspective. So everyone know what to expect in September. And looking at the questions that we have, what extra expenses have surprised us? I think it's been already mentioned by Ruben and Tatiana. All costs are related to sanitary regime. The mask, we did some mask with logo, so our students like them. And we had the graduation for our grade 12 on site because the government changed the restrictions, so we could actually have the graduation on campus. So it was fabulous, but everyone had to wear the masks. So and this cost overall, I was just looking at this this morning, and it seems like over the last 4 weeks we spent 0.2% overall budget just for COVID-19. So it also gives me some feedback how much it may cost overall in the next school year, 0.2%. However, I wouldn't say it's going to be fixed because we need to adjust with what is coming in the next months and the expectations. But at least I know how much we can put aside, we can budget for the next year. However, it's still open. And what enrollment scenarios are we planning? And a couple of weeks ago, I was saying the enrollment can plummet even to up to 50%, and this is what we were planning and building within our different scenarios. But it seems like now, right now, the enrollment is not that dramatic as we were thinking a couple months ago or weeks ago. But still, for now, it looks probably we can be minus 10%, minus 15% in this range, 0 to 20%. The key point is, and this is what Ru has said, the enrollment is the key. The enrollment is the key, and we see right now the entire enrollment process has been delayed, and right now the admission is just coming back. I mean, parents are finally contacting us, and so I think a lot will happen over the next 2 months in terms of the admission and in terms of the enrollment. And we send out the contracts, we send out the invoices. So we have already some feedback from parents, who is staying, who is leaving, and who is undecided. And the numbers are looking good, but still there is some buffer from many parents who said, "Oh, we will know this in the next few weeks." So I think this is the key, the enrollment. And the closer to the beginning of the next school year, I think the situation will improve, and I believe the enrollment will go up. And what was the most challenging right now in the budget? Just income, number of students. And on the first webinar, I said staffing is also the of course is the key in school, but I think the most scary is if there is a second lockdown, if people go travel and they cannot come back to the country, and how many teachers we still need if the numbers will change in the enrollment. So I think I don't want to repeat, but yeah, and enrollment is the most challenging right now. And of course we have been tracking all expenses for COVID-19 budget, so this also is helpful, and this was a challenge to assess how much is going to cost once we reopen. And also, of course, financial aid and payment plans. We are contacted by families and they struggle with cash flow. So also they ask us for financial support, and this is what is happening. So we have also the process to help these families who are in need. And the last one is if there is any advice from those who have reopened the school. I think for me, what I've seen, the communication will be the key, because it's going to be a chaos at some point, information chaos, either from outside, either from inside. So I found to communicate with teachers, with administrators, with parents in very simple and clear way, so everyone understands what is going on, what's the plan, what to expect, etc., etc. I know it's could be difficult for someone who is going to face these issues in the next few months, but I think it's going to. I mean, it helps us. It also helped me to manage finances and communicate with different staff members and also parents. The communication will be the key. Also to avoid the mistakes and errors that we are right now exposed, because the amount of information that we are processing, and we were processing a couple of weeks ago, was unbelievable. So I mean, that's overall what is happening in Krakow, and we are happy that we finished the school year, and we are looking forward to the next one. Hope to stay on campus all the time, all the school year. But it seems like we are going to be on hybrid model next school year. So we are preparing for this. Back to Georgie.
Hi, Piotr. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's some really good insights, and I'm sure that the delegates that are with us attending are sharing sort of similar things. Is there anything that you would say, and this seems like a crazy question, but has there been any savings actually from what you've experienced? Have you managed to reduce costs in any way? Has there been any, and also has there been any positives that you can identify from this experience?
I mean, in Krakow, of course, there were some cost savings. I mean, the teachers are not on campus, so I mean, we saved also some money on the energy, on gas, on water, etc., on field trips as well, and on different individual things. But that's also on the other side. We just spent, and we had this discussion, ongoing discussion, in terms of the tuition refund that was mentioned by Tatiana, and we know in the next school year the school is going to cost more, and we cannot adjust the tuition, and we cannot announce to parents, okay, right now the school is going to cost more because we have this XYZ extra cost. It's fixed, it's set, and so whatever was saved, and we are closing, the books next week, is going to be offset for expenditures for the next school year. And also this is related with the tuition refund, and I think everyone was committed, everyone was working hard, and teachers were working hard, and there are extra costs related to hiring new teachers, etc. So yes, they were some savings on this, but I would not say they were so significant, considering also that our school was reopened on May. So for those schools who stayed virtual, I guess there were more savings, but we reopened 4 weeks ago. So basically within 1 week, we had to purchase, thousands of masks, thousands of liters of disinfection liquids, etc., etc. And some expenses costs are quite expensive, like thermal cameras and so on. But we talk with the finance committee, and the next school year is going to be more expensive, because on the top of the cost of the stationary education, we have to add the model of virtual education or hybrid, because we think and the stationary education, we need to also support those who will not come back, or who will stay home once there is a case, or once there is a second wave or lockdown, etc. But maybe Ruth and Tatiana can also share their perspective on cost savings.
Yeah, since we didn't open but continue virtual, we did have savings. As Piotr mentioned, all these utilities, but also field trips and professional development, school supplies, all these things that they use every day in their work. and it is quite a nice sum. However, let's not forget that 80% of our costs are fixed, salaries and all these things that we are paying for foreign teachers, and plus we have a loan for a new building, so this all needs to be paid, and we are expecting that this profit we will spend to prepare ourselves for next school year, which is great that we have that money.
Yeah, absolutely. Tatiana, this might be a good time. We do have a short poll to share with our delegates that are attending, so I'm going to launch that, and then we can carry on sort of discussing. If you had to identify one thing at the moment, what would you say is the most challenging for you and your role, and your cat, who's just behind you, who's joined the audience? What is the most challenging right now in the budget?
Well, right now the most challenging is enrollment, because we still don't know what will happen until August. However, it's always enrollment challenging, because you don't know, even families that say they will return in August, sometimes they are not, and they are sent somewhere else. So it is always challenging, and now it's particularly challenging. And our faculty, will they be able to come?
Yeah,
especially those from US that needs to come. Those are, I mean, some of them are still not in the US, and they need to come. So
they've got to go back home, and then they've got to come back out again. Yeah.
Yes, and but however, we said that they need to come earlier, so they have 14 days before they come to school.
Yeah. So how you know, honestly, how would you say that's impacting how your staff and your team are feeling at the moment?
It's challenging, really, because all our contracts are signed, and we are not able to do much. So if we need to cut the budget, then that's really something that first we are cutting in some basic things that we need for school, and field trips and professional development, all these things. And if things are really bad regarding enrollment, then we need to cut stuff, which is not easy, and it's actually, you have costs for another 3 to 12 months. It's, if you are cutting stuff, then you have still costs to pay as a severance payment of 3 months according to our policy for foreign hires. So then we need to take some reserves from previous years, which we are lucky to have.
Yes.
From last few years.
Yeah, and also I think it'd be great, you were sharing just before the start of the call, you're actually finishing a little bit early, but that's because, do you want to explain the model that you adopted at your school?
Yes, so we're supposed to have 1 week of holidays after Easter, but we a little bit investigate how it works how it worked in Asia, and we got a feedback that it's better not to have any holidays, because it's very, very difficult for students to come back and start again to focus and to get into that level where they can participate actively in school. We also did the survey amongst our teachers and also students and parents, and then we decided just to take Friday and Monday, and 4 days we moved at the end of the year, so we actually finished school year last Friday. Otherwise we would finished this week. So it's 1 week less school, and they are all happy for it because they really needed holidays. However, they said, we are not able to go with families anywhere, we are not able to travel. Parents needed to work that week, so they will have again work and kids at home. And they couldn't. It was better for them to have to continue with school that week.
Yeah. So and as a result, that's left you feeling really quite tired, isn't it? There's not really been much of a break. You were sharing that as well, weren't you, Ruth? Yeah. Sorry, you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wondered if that was at a time when there was still this idea that we would be only out for 2 weeks, because in Luxembourg it was sort of, we're out for 2 weeks before the Easter holiday, and then there was another week before the Easter break, and basically the government then said, oh, we'll close and we'll get back to you after the Easter break. And then after the, during the Easter break, they said, well, no, we're not opening, and we were following the guidelines. So there was this psychological moment where it was like 2 weeks, and then, oh, well, yeah, it looks like it's going to be for the rest of the year. So we weren't making the choice in that same, in the perspective that we would never open up again.
Yeah, it wasn't an informed choice. Is that what you're saying? It was, yeah.
They say immediately we are closing for 30 days.
Yeah. Okay.
But we looking at Asia, we actually estimated that it will not be like that. That for sure we will be closed by at least mid or end of May.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided this.
Okay, it'd probably be a good time just to, we've got the results in from the poll, so I'll just share the results just so we can have a look at how our audience is feeling. Can you all see that? Okay, so everyone's in a hot country. I have to say, in the UK, it's been absolutely tipping it down, but it's got a lot better this afternoon.
You didn't get a vote, Georgie, that's why.
I know I didn't get a vote. Are you feeling the heat financially speaking? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, 100% of you are all really feeling that at the moment. Is your school in lockdown? So actually somebody isn't, but the rest of them are. Is your school in virtual learning? Again, yes, and there's one individual that isn't. When are you planning re-entry to school mode? So we've got some actually in that process now. A lot of people are now holding off till September, and actually there's somebody here who's attending that's looking at later. So I wonder how far. It would be good for comments to come on the chat box about how far later that is, because that would be quite an interesting model. Are any of you aware of sort of other colleagues that are opening much later than September? What is your business role? So we actually have sort of business managers, facilities and other. So just sharing that out. But are any of you actually aware of any sort of colleagues that are having a model where they're opening much later?
We don't, I mean, we're still in the discussion mode of what plan for September. Is it going to be A, B or C? Is it going to be a mix of all three? And basically trying to debrief on what we've experienced so far, to then find out. I know that what we haven't touched, and we touched more on the previous webinars, the refund requests and such. We've kind of felt the pressure because in terms of savings, school base, we've not felt that too much. I don't feel that we've made many savings, but again, we've had a little longer than Piotr in re-entry, so a bit less of deconfinement. But it's true that on the longer term, we're starting to sort of feel that there's rumblings from parents on the value for money. A third of our budget is subsidy, so parents are then sort of tend to forget that, and then they go, well, there must have been some subsidy from the state on staffing and so on, so we need refunds. But one thing in terms of value for money is that, first of all, as I said at the beginning, we're not a virtual school. We were never set up for that. and we're trying our best to sort of rank up to that. But the school did a lot of after school activities. Part of that was, you know, the sort of the community aspect. And when we did re-entry, we were able to do the alternate classes, but we weren't able to do all of those extra activities. So the spirit of the school isn't there, or we're not comparable to what we were. So there's a sort of disconnect. And clearly, if re-entry happens in September without all of that, parents are already questioning and will continue to question, what's the point of paying fees if we're just getting homework virtually? You know, I could sign up to MIT online courses for cheaper. Not nearly, but anyway. So it's true that in terms of refund requests, I can see that continuing, whether it's because of perceived savings or just perceived lack of value. Yeah, we're basically hoping it's not going to be later.
Yeah.
But it's true that I know some of our other counterparties are going, what's the point of starting up if it's going to be closing down again? And they've got to look at their numbers. Yeah, I mean, UK is already, you know, 2 weeks later than us. They're not deconfined yet. There's a few things that have started. As Tatiana said, you know, we'll in Schengen zones, traveling is opened up again. A number of things are opening up again. Frankly, if you go into town, you feel like here in Luxembourg, you feel like nobody knows about COVID. Yeah. When in fact we've got masks and such. So it'll be interesting to see if by everybody going wild again, the second wave is going to happen in August. So, you know, there's a lot of speculation going on a little bit as to, you know, are we being used a little bit as guinea pigs to sort of just, or to find out if the wave comes in August, because it'd be better if it comes in August when everybody's meant to be on holiday, than it to come in September when everybody wants to restart. So yeah, there's those things to, we try to do,
We've got a couple of, Piotr, you asked a question around, has anyone changed the cash reserve policy due to COVID? I don't know whether Ruth or Tatiana, you've actually adjusted that at all.
We've not changed the policy, but we're looking at it.
Yeah.
We're certainly, you know, doing projections on enrollment that we would have never done before. You know, the -20s or whatever, just to get a feel of how long it would last. Because our cash reserve is about 3 months of operating expenses. We don't have a massive endowment. And I had a question from a parent that is not incorrect, which is, so I'm meant to pay the fees by end of June. You don't know exactly, and nobody knows, it's crystal ball, what's going to happen in September. I'd like my fees to be in an escrow account for guarantee, because if you're not opening up, I don't want you to have those fees. Yeah.
That's quite an interesting approach. Tatiana, do you have sort of similar experiences? Have you considered your cash reserve policy?
Well, we are also considering, but we didn't do anything except that, you know, we know we will need to change things. Right now, we do have good response regarding enrollment, and as Ruth said, in Croatia also you just can't feel there was any COVID. It's unbelievable. People are acting like nothing happened like 2 months ago. So really it's difficult to say how this will continue. And I'm sure we will face that parents doesn't have to pay immediately. Some of them are paying in installments, and usually you have always parents that pay before school year starts. Now it will be interesting to see with development with COVID during the summer whether they will actually pay or not, and then they will definitely be in trouble. Because
but I think, sorry,
it
Tatiana.
continues online. We changed enrollment contract where we said specifically that each online day is equal to actual day in school, so they cannot take this as a matter in the court. But we'll see.
Yeah, our enrollment contracts were out in February, so there was no way we could change them after the fact.
we have already we adjusted the contract, so we sent them out a couple of weeks ago. So we could actually adjust a lot. I mean, a lot to the current situation. I mean, but I think also we are facing an issue with cash reserve policy, because if we assume that the standard cash reserve policy says we should put aside 25 to 50% of the cash outflow of or your budget, then if we go, or if we decide to be more strict with the cash reserve policy, so to go up with the limit to maybe 70% or 60%. So now the question is how to actually get this cash reserve, because with the upcoming year and with lower enrollment, we can have a good cash policy actually written, but not necessarily funded exactly. So so this needs to be also considered, and then we look at this. But I think overall, and this would be advice to all schools, and I've been thinking about this. And this is what Tatiana has said. The parents will try to pay later or delay with payments. And I think right now the focus should be on quick execution. And if a parent doesn't pay on this day, then there is a process involved, also with legal all tools we have in hands, maybe even going to the court, etc., etc. So I think at some point our tools just are not enough to execute the payment. So this is the one thing that we've been talking recently, and definitely here in Krakow we will try to adjust the execution of the payment, because I cannot imagine to operate the school with whatever the percentage will be with delay payments. There is no way. So I think it has to be very corporate approach to the collection of the fees.
Yeah. So I think also it's interesting, Juliet sharing from the Wingate School in Mexico City, that the parents are considering the service is not the same, and thus they should not pay the same. And they're trying to offer sort of after school activities via Zoom, such as RS dancing, taekwondo, poetry, just to sort of give true value for money. If you work in the education system, you do actually understand that in some ways it's actually much harder and much more tiring to teach sort of virtually, and it's taken up a considerable amount of teachers' resources, and it's how you actually communicate that message out. What do you say your most successful approach to communications with the parents has been?
I think as I said, most of it we followed Luxembourg guidelines, so we didn't have much that we could say differently. Yeah, we couldn't go and decide that we wouldn't open up because or that we would open differently because the guidelines were there to, and there was no flexibility because we're kind of under the Ministry of Foreign, Ministry of Education, partially at least in Luxembourg, and things like giving parents choices of attending or not. Apart from if they were out of the country, again, because of the ministry laws, they didn't have the choice, at least after six years old, because there's obligation of attendance in school. So it's true that in terms of communication, we were just simply, unfortunately, to a certain extent, having to sort of explain something that wasn't of our control, which, you know, you're just the messenger sometimes, and the frustration comes to you. And, you know, we had to close. It wasn't our choice to decide to be closed or not. And it's not us choosing to be open or not. And it's true, I'm sure we could have done a bit more on the virtual Zoom or such, but I think the staff were mainly concentrating on the core education. Yeah. And in terms of communication, we were communicating. Our director was away sick, but our lower school principal was communicating every day. And open for comments or queries or such. But yeah, I think in the future, if we had it again, we would certainly look after the, you know, more after school activities. But it's true, you can't do soccer, you can't do basketball, you can't do all of the collective sports, and we have, you know, tournaments and such. You can't do those virtually in Zoom, and my children or other children were sort of exhausted from being on the screen all day. Offering, you know, another sport activity on the screen, when in fact we were we're in the lower school especially, you know, we were trying to get this right balance of screen time previously, and then it all goes to moot. So yeah, we didn't choose that, but even if I take the savings of the stipends that would be paid, a drop in the ocean compared to the costs. So it's generally a feeling, yeah. We weren't allowed to get out, but parents were, you know, we were allowed to go for walks and such. But it's true that if you were a parent and you were working as well as having to do the teacher, you really had to take on the role of going, okay, now I need to be a good parent and get a bit of sun outside and walk and do some activities that you might only think and consider during holidays. So it's really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. Juliet's also shared they've done some town hall meetings with each year group and the head teacher and deputy, and they've been quite well received by parents. So that's quite a good strategy. Yeah, very good idea. Okay,
we had parent sort of coffee mornings, but yeah, if parents were working,
they couldn't access them anyway. So.
It was like,
Okay, well, I think we're drawing everything to a close now. Obviously, it's a very busy time for everybody, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time to come and join us today. It's great to actually capture some of the kind of current progress, and we will continue to have the forum. I think in the autumn term, when you're actually returning, hopefully back to school, that would be a really, really good time to actually revisit this group. Thank you everybody for joining us today. This is part of a series of free webinars that ECIS are doing, and we're actually part of the International School Recovery Forum, alongside Clear Path Alerts and Together Schools. So that's another area and resource that people can go and access if they want to access free resources. There's a community hub there as well for people to sort of discuss different challenges, and we're trying to push out key resources that might help. But thank you so much to the committee today. We really appreciate your time. We know that you're having busy days, and then actually to hop on a webinar as well at the end of it. I think we're all ready for our summer holidays. What they will look like, though, will definitely be a different type of holiday this year. We hugely appreciate everything you're doing at the moment, and thank you very much.
I mean, the resources, as I said, I think Tatiana shared a Google Doc, so our contact details are in it, and you can go through the questions we've answered. ICEL's webpage had a thorough re-entry descriptive, so yeah, don't hesitate to copy paste. I think other schools have had it too on public domain and shared, but yeah, that's what we hope to be able to provide is some opportunity to copy paste and shorten our days.
Yeah,
to get
out eventually. Thank you all. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Piotr, for your time today, and we hugely appreciate it. So we'll catch up very soon, and please keep safe and well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.